Praise is due to you, O God, in Zion.
And to you shall vows be performed.
To you who hear prayer, and all flesh shall come because of their sins.
When our transgressions prevail over us, you forgive them.
Blessed are those whom you choose and bring near to dwell in your courts.
We shall be satisfied with the goods of your house, your holy temple.
By dread deeds you answer us with deliverance, O God of our salvation.
Who is the hope of all the ends of the earth, and the part of the seas, who by your strength established mountains, being girded in light.
Who stills the roaring of the seas, the roaring of their waves, the tumult of the peoples, so that those who dwell at earth's farthest bounds are afraid at your signs. You visit the earth and water it, you greatly enrich it.
The river of God is full of water. You provide its rain, for so you have prepared it.
You water its furrows abundantly, settling its ridges, softening it with showers and blessings its growth.
You crown the river with bounty, the calves of your chariot drip with fatness.
The pastures of the wilderness drip, the hills gird themselves with joy.
The meadows clothe themselves with flocks, the valleys deck themselves with grain. They shout and sing together for joy.
For I am already being poured out like a drink offering, and the time has come for my departure. I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing. And now down to 16. At my first defense, no one came to my support, but everyone deserted me. May it not be held against them, but the Lord stood at my side and gave me strength, so that through me the message might be fully proclaimed, and all the Gentiles might hear it. And I was delivered from the lion's mouth. The Lord will rescue me from every evil attack and will bring me safely to his heavenly kingdom. To him be glory forever and ever. Amen. to some who were confident at their own righteousness and looked down on everybody else, Jesus told this parable. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood up and prayed about himself, God, I thank you that I am not like other men, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give 1/10 of all I get. But the tax collector stood at a distance. He would not even look up to heaven, but beat his breast and said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. I tell you that this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. May God bless the reading.
I invite you to join in a moment of prayer. Oh, dear Lord, may all of our thoughts and our feelings, the meditations of our minds and of our hearts, and the words of my mouth be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Don't Jesus' stories always give us a glimpse into the heart of God? And Jesus' stories are meant to change our life. Not just to inspire us, not just to challenge us. Jesus' stories excavate our true character and motivations and challenge us to follow Christ with fearless commitment. And that kind of commitment will change our lives so that we get to that place where we have a life with no regrets. So that this story is definitely for everyone in this room. And our story begins with these challenging words to some who are confident in their own righteousness and look down on everyone else. And Jesus told this parable. 2 men went to the temple to pray. One a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. Oh, the Pharisee stood by himself and prayed, God, I thank you that I'm not like other people, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week and I give 1/10 of all I get. Well, there's an old joke about a new patient who was going to see a psychiatrist for the first time. And the psychiatrist says, well, I'm not aware of your issue. So maybe you should start at the beginning. Well, the patient just rolled his eyes and sighed. He said, oh, okay. All right, in the beginning, I created heaven and earth. The Pharisee in our story seems to think he's also God's gift to, God. and let's face it, according to conventional values, well, he's an upright guy. He's not a robber or an evildoer nor an adulterer. Surely Jesus is going to hold him up as an example. Hey, this is the way you should live your lives. Not how you shouldn't. But didn't Jesus begin the story by saying 2 men went to the temple to pray? A Pharisee and a tax collector. And the Pharisee is the polar opposite of the tax collector. You know how well we like the IRS, right? That's nothing. Tax collectors were hated by the Jewish people of Jesus' day. They were often Jewish citizens who were hired by the oppressive Roman government to collect taxes from their fellow Jews. And Rome just looked the other way if the tax collector, added a few extra surcharges on the already high taxes. Tax collectors were held in such disrepute they weren't allowed to testify in court. They were considered societal outcasts, utter disgraces to their family. And such men were the lowest of the low, so much so that they were even excommunicated from the synagogues. Now, let's listen to the tax collector's prayer. And Jesus continued in verse 13, but the tax collector stood at a distance. He wouldn't even look up to heaven, but he beat his breast and said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Well, he knows exactly what he is, a sinner in need of God's mercy. And then Jesus gives punchline. I tell you that this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. And don't we wonder, why does Jesus do this? Why is he so controversial? Why does he criticize a fine, upstanding religious leader and praise that worthless tax collector? Of course we know the story, and we know the answer. With every story he told, Jesus was trying to reveal the character of God and the nature of God's kingdom. His goal is never to shame us. His goal was not to shame us, but to show us what we're missing out on when we don't fully understand the heart of God. So what does Jesus want us to learn from these two men in their prayers? Notice that the one man stood before God in self-righteousness, and the other man stood before God in brokenness. So, it's pretty clear. What do you think about the verse? Yeah. Over 1,600 years ago, theologian and philosopher St. Augustine, one of our great religious leaders, wrote to one of his students, what does it take to understand the truth of God? Right? That's a good question. So he said, well, it requires three things. The first is humility. The second is humility. The third, humility. This parable gives us so much to think about when we ponder how we're going to get to where we can live with no regrets. So now let's look at 2 Timothy. And you might wonder, why do we need this? It's almost an embarrassingly personal, private message between the mentor and protege. And it would seem like voyeurs listening in. Maybe, I think we should just draw the curtains around the hospital bed, and let them chat as we tend to other things. But except that here, as in all things, there's a lesson to be learned, a life to consider, perhaps a model. We listen in and we hear a challenge to the kind of life that the gospel requires. Requirements, demands, that doesn't seem right. The kind of life that the gospel affords or invites us. A door opened into the kind of life, this all or nothing life. And one who opens the door. The one who opens the door for us is going to stand with us every moment of our lives. To the very But perhaps we're getting ahead of ourselves here. And let's look at this life. Paul's poured out life. The mentor describes the life as one fighting the good fight or running the race. You can choose your metaphor. Oh, goodness. Maybe fighting isn't such a good metaphor in these contentious times. But we fight. We fight for air. We fight for rights. There are fights that we all carry on in all sorts of connotations. Always in a fight against cancer, right? And the verse says, the good fight, which brings to mind the late Congressman George Lewis's call to get into good trouble. Trouble for the right purposes. Trouble to bring about the right change. Fighting for the sake of fighting or to prove one's strength or toughness, that's not a good fight. But the fight for justice, for redemption, for transformation, that just might be. Or maybe just keeping the faith would be the place where we settle for in this moment. What does it mean to keep the faith? Do we keep it to ourselves? Keep it hidden away and safe and secure from all alarms? Keep it unchallenged, unexamined, tucked away, some rarely visited corner of our existence? Surely not. No, the call is to keep the faith before us, always. To let faith, to let Jesus be the measure by which our lives are measured. We keep the faith when we live it every day. We keep the faith when we don't set it aside, when the choices get difficult. We keep the faith when challenged by divisiveness and hatred and prejudice. We don't set it aside to just go along and get along. We risk security and privilege by keeping the faith. We keep the faith by listening to and learning from the words of Jesus. By looking at his life to model our own. We keep the faith even when others seem to be swayed by something less than faith of Jesus. Something that resembles the faith of nation or race or moments. Paul forging ahead. He's facing the end of his life. This is his final moments. He declares that he has kept the faith. And God's given us another day of living. Of choosing. Of leading. And can we declare the same, that we're keeping the faith? Living a faith with no regrets. It requires humility and keeping the faith. But maybe before we're done, we need to pause for a moment to examine regret. You know, many songs have been written about regret, but few have the power of a song called Hurt. You know, I didn't notice it was written by Trent Reznor of 9-Inch Nails, but then recorded by the great Johnny Cash. I wear this crown of thorns upon my liar's chair, Cash sings, the words in his deep baritone, looking old and close to death. Full of broken thoughts I cannot repair. regret is a powerful emotion. I don't think any of us are free of regret. Right? It's common to all of us to look back, to have regrets about the things we've done or the things we failed to do. We regret our failings right along with our failures to embrace promising and positive opportunities. Like Johnny Cash, we're full of broken thoughts, ruminating on things that you can't go back and change, you cannot repair. And regret is hard to handle. But you know what? It really isn't a bad emotion. In fact, it has power to improve our lives. Daniel Pink has written a book called The Power of Regret, one that explores how regret can help us to make smarter decisions, improve our performance in school and at work, and more importantly, to enjoy more meaningful lives. You know, we shouldn't run from regret. You know, when you run, it catches up with you. Instead, we should learn from it. Regret is a tool that helps us learn, says Pink in an interview. It's adaptive. Maybe we're in a time when we just got overboard about positivity. When in fact, negative emotions also have value. And the first step is to see ourselves honestly. Just like the tax collector. You know, we had that come to Jesus moment. Express our regret about our failures. And after seeing ourselves clearly, we need to show some true humility. In this, we should listen to the words of the Apostle Paul. You know, going along with the advice he gave to Timothy in Philippians, he said, "Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility regard others as better than yourselves." Our role model for this is Jesus, who emptied himself, taking the form of a slave, being born in human likeness, being found in human form. He humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Humble, self-emptying, obedient. These are the qualities of Jesus Christ and his true followers, qualities that led to Christ's exaltation. Remember, back at the end of the parable, Jesus said, "All who exalt themselves will be humbled, and all who humble themselves will be exalted." The path to God's future includes serving others sacrificially and following a Lord who came to serve and not to be served. All of us have regrets. Every single one of us. Full of broken thoughts about things we cannot repair. But looking backward with honesty and humility, we can't just keep looking backwards, right? It has to help us move forward to a glorious future as faithful followers of Jesus Christ. And along the way, maybe like Paul, when we reach the end of our lives, you know, Paul had regrets, big time regrets. But he got to the end of his life and he was living with no regrets. Because he had lived his life to the fullest. We can get there.